The 50 Most Impressive Mysteries of Angels. Number 50. The Enigma of the Celestial Hierarchy. Throughout the history of Christianity, various authors have proposed systems to organize angels into different choirs or levels, based on their proximity to divinity and the functions they perform. One of the best-known schemes comes from Pseudo-Dionysius the Areopagite, who, in his treatise The Celestial Hierarchy, establishes 3 main orders subdivided into 9 choirs: seraphim, cherubim and thrones, dominions, virtues and powers, principalities, archangels and angels. This classification, however, has not been universally accepted in the Christian world, and the existence of other lists, even some drawn up by esoteric and mystical currents, feeds the idea that the angelic order is a profound mystery whose rules escape full human understanding. Theologians such as Thomas Aquinas explored the idea that the closer a choir is to the divine essence, the greater the intensity of its love and wisdom. Other medieval thinkers debated whether the hierarchy obeyed a real rank of power or was rather a metaphorical order that symbolized different modes of service to God. The absence of a total consensus reveals the complexity of these beings, who in sacred texts appear as messengers, warriors, or protectors. Such diversity of visions has inspired not only theology, but also art, literature, and popular imagination, generating an enigma that remains current in the study of the celestial. Number 49. Angels in Zoroastrianism. In ancient Persia, Zoroastrianism was one of the first monotheistic religions with a complex system of spiritual entities. Their sacred text, the Avesta, describes Ahura Mazda as the supreme deity and the Amisha Spentas as sacred beings who embody divine aspects such as truth, Asha, or good mind, Vohu Mana. These Amisha Spentas played a protective role and served as intermediaries between Ahura Mazda and humanity, promoting the fight against the forces of evil led by Angra Mainyu. Many scholars maintain that, during the Babylonian captivity, the Jews came into contact with Persian traditions, adopting some of their conceptions of protective spiritual entities, which may have influenced the later development of angels in Judaism. Furthermore, certain parallels between the Amisha Spentas and the angelic choirs of the Abrahamic religions have led to the conjecture that the idea of divine messengers, ordered in hierarchies, was already circulating in the Middle East before the consolidation of Judeo-Christian monotheism. This connection reinforces the importance of Zoroastrianism as a precedent in the configuration of angelology in the West. Number 48. The Guardian Angel. The idea that each person has a guardian angel, destined to watch over his physical and spiritual well-being, is present in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, as well as appearing in some apocryphal texts and oral traditions. In the Book of Tobit, for example, the Archangel Raphael guides and protects Tobit on a journey full of dangers, acting as a divine companion who reveals his true identity only at the end of the journey. These narratives reinforce the belief in a constant heavenly care that sometimes goes unnoticed by human consciousness. Medieval Christian theology addressed in detail the function of these guardian angels, discussing whether they directly influence thoughts or whether their work consists of providing external protection against misfortunes and spiritual threats. Some saints, such as Bernard of Clairvaux, claimed that the guardian angel actively participates in the life of the person, praying for him and presenting his requests to God. Although it is difficult to pinpoint the exact nature of this protection, the belief in an angel assigned to each individual underscores the concept of a personal and intimate relationship between the human and the divine. Number 47. The Mystery of Angelic Names. In the Judeo-Christian tradition, certain names of archangels, Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael, appear frequently in both the canonical Bible and other sacred writings, reflecting divine attributes or functions. Michael, whose name means "who is like God," is associated with defending the faith and fighting evil forces. Gabriel, "God is my strength," is linked to the transmission of heavenly messages. And Raphael, "God heals," is associated with healing and protecting travelers. These names are not mere poetic titles, but express the nature and purpose of each entity. In apocryphal texts, such as the Book of Enoch, other angels are mentioned with lesser-known names, such as Uriel, Sariel, or Raguel, each with specific roles in sacred history. For example, Uriel is sometimes described as the guardian of the gates of Eden or as a teacher of prophets, suggesting a heavenly organization so complex that it defies the simple enumeration of a handful of famous angels. The growing number of names recorded in mystical tradition, especially in Kabbalistic literature, points to the idea that the angelic realm is vast and multifaceted, cementing the enduring fascination surrounding these powerful messengers. Number 46. Apparitions of angels in mystical visions. Several mystics and saints of Christianity, such as Saint Teresa of Avila, described ecstatic experiences in which they perceived angels speaking to them, comforting them, or pointing them toward paths of spiritual perfection. In her writings, she recounts moments when she felt an intensely luminous and loving presence, so vivid that she found it impossible to attribute it to imagination. Similarly, Hildegard of Bingen had visions involving radiant figures who were identified with the divine will and who transmitted to her knowledge of music, medicine, and morality. These manifestations, recorded in hagiography and mystical treatises, have given rise to multiple interpretations. Some scholars see in these accounts the influence of the culture and religious expectations of the time, while others maintain that the coincidences between testimonies of saints from different places constitute evidence of genuine transcendental experiences. The fact that visions of angels are a phenomenon reported in diverse geographical and temporal contexts raises constant questions about the nature of mystical reality and the role of heavenly messengers in humanity's relationship with the divine. Number 45. Angels in Renaissance art. The Renaissance saw the emergence of a pictorial and sculptural representation of angels that, despite being inspired by Christian tradition, adopted idealized features of classical aesthetics. Painters such as Michelangelo, Raphael, and Botticelli depicted angelic figures with serene features, harmonious bodies, and delicate attire. In many of their works, angels appear accompanied by musical instruments, in bucolic or heavenly settings, transmitting a sweetness and refined beauty that contrasts with the biblical descriptions of powerful and sometimes fearsome beings. On the other hand, not all artists of the time moved away from the biblical vision of divine warriors. In some interpretations of episodes such as the Annunciation or the expulsion of Adam and Eve from paradise, angels are shown with flaming swords or robust armor. These more warlike versions tended to portray the strength and authority of the heavenly messengers, evoking their role as protectors of divine justice. The wide range of Renaissance artistic representations shows the difficulty of capturing in images the complexity that angelology has had in theology and in popular devotion. Number 44. The role of angels in spiritual warfare. In several biblical texts, there are references to authentic battles in the celestial sphere between angels and evil powers that try to subvert the order established by God. The Book of Daniel recounts the conflict between the archangel Michael and adverse princes, who represent nations opposed to the people of Israel, thus offering a vision of conflicts that transcend the merely political and enter the divine realm. Similarly, in the Apocalypse of John, the great war in heaven is described, where Michael and his angels fight against the dragon, symbol of Satan, and his fallen hosts. This image of angels as divine warriors emphasizes their active nature in protecting the faithful and defending creation against the forces of chaos. For Christian theology, these stories express the conviction that evil is not only fought on earth, but that there is a higher dimension where angels fulfill a crucial mission, safeguarding universal harmony. Medieval theologians and later exegetes interpreted these battles as allegories of the moral struggle in the heart of human beings, but they also admitted the possibility of literal confrontations between opposing spiritual forces. Number 43. Angels in Islam, the four archangels. In Islamic tradition, as recorded in the Quran and the Hadiths, angels are beings created by Allah from light, who constantly devote themselves to praising Him and carrying out His will. Among them, four main archangels stand out: Gabriel, in charge of bringing divine revelation to the prophets; Michael, responsible for distributing natural resources such as rain and the fertility of the earth; Israfil, assigned to blow the trumpet at the time of resurrection and the Last Judgment; and Azrael, who was in charge of taking souls when the time of death arrives. These archangels, unlike the Christian tradition that contemplates the possibility of free will in angels, are seen as absolutely obedient servants, incapable of rebelling. For Islam, angels know neither pride nor disobedience, which highlights the conception of a perfectly ordered universe under divine omnipotence. Islamic accounts and commentaries describe in detail the greatness of angels, emphasizing their purity and unwavering fidelity, and presenting them as fundamental actors in the history of salvation and in daily interaction with human beings. Number 42. The appearance of angels in dreams. Since Genesis, with Jacob's famous dream in which he sees a ladder on which angels ascend and descend, it has been suggested that the dream realm is a suitable space for communication with the celestial world. In the Bible and in other sacred stories, it is narrated how angels transmit messages or warnings in nocturnal visions, often presenting themselves with a radiance that surpasses the common imagery of dreams. These episodes have stimulated theological reflections on the nature of sleep, considered by some to be a threshold between everyday reality and the spiritual dimension. In mystical traditions and in certain monastic writings, discernment is advised in the face of these dream appearances, since not every messenger in a dream would necessarily be benign. However, the fact that many saintly and prophetic personalities have reported dreams guided by angels reveals the recognition of a possible divine intervention through dream experience. Different schools of interpretation have tried to clarify whether these angelic dreams were symbols of an inner process or true encounters with celestial beings, while the question remains open as to the real influence they exert on spiritual life. Number 41. Angels in the Gnostic tradition. In the Gnostic currents, which flourished in the first centuries of the Christian era, angels could be conceived as emanations of an imperfect demiurge or even as powers that kept humanity trapped in the material world. For these groups, the true supreme God was beyond the defective creation, and some angels served as deceitful intermediaries who perpetuated the control of the demiurge. However, other Gnostic branches accepted the existence of benefactor angels who guided the soul in its search for gnosis or liberating knowledge. The discovery of Gnostic texts in places such as Nag Hammadi in 1945 allowed a greater understanding of the dualistic and sometimes controversial vision of the nature of the divine and the angelic. In these writings, The complex organization of archons, eons, and angels reflects a cosmogony different from that proposed by the Orthodox Church. Such divergence in the interpretation of the angelic role provoked intense debates in antiquity, with Christian orthodoxy rejecting the idea of hostile angels as contrary to divine goodness. The plurality of Gnostic positions emphasizes the diversity of conceptions regarding celestial beings and the metaphysical framework of the universe. Number 40. The debate on their free will. One of the most debated theological points in Christian angelology is whether angels retain the ability to choose good or evil. The narrative of the fall of Lucifer, the most beautiful angel who, according to tradition, rebelled out of pride, suggests that there was, at some point, the possibility of opposing the divine will. Some theologians maintain that, after this rebellion, the rest of the angels decided to adhere irrevocably to God's plan, being confirmed in grace, and thus losing the option of deviating. The question of angelic free will particularly intrigued the scholastics, who tried to reconcile divine omniscience with the freedom of creatures. Thomas Aquinas considered that, since angels had a much higher intelligence than humans and contemplated the glory of God more directly, their decisions were extremely firm and irreversible. Other thinkers, on the other hand, argued that an alleged lack of freedom would be incompatible with the capacity to love God by one's own choice. This debate was never definitively settled, and it reflects humanity's perennial fascination with the relationship between divine omnipotence and the autonomy of spiritual beings. Number 39. Differences between angels and saints. In the field of Christian theology, angels are purely spiritual beings created by God to serve Him and act as messengers or protectors of humanity. They have not experienced earthly life as we know it, since their essence is not corporeal but heavenly. On the contrary, saints are men and women who, after a life of virtue and obedience to the divine will, are recognized by the Church as examples of holiness, thus reaching a state of special communion with God. This status comes from a path of faith, devotion, and sacrifice, which essentially differentiates them from the angelic nature, which does not require redemption or salvation. Even so, in the devotional practice of many believers, there is often confusion between the two, to the point that in some popular prayers or traditions, requests to angels and saints are mixed indiscriminately. While the saints intercede before God thanks to the union they achieved with Him in their earthly life, the angels carry out divine orders and can protect or guide people according to the established plan. These differences underline the richness of the Christian spiritual universe, where beings originally created for divine worship would coexist with human beings who, through love and dedication, come ever closer to heavenly glory. Number 38. Angels in apocryphal literature. The texts called apocryphal or pseudepigrapha include works not recognized in the official biblical canon, but which circulated widely in the religious communities of antiquity. Among them, the Book of Enoch stands out, which describes fallen angels known as watchers, who would have engendered giants, the Nephilim, by uniting with human women. This story, absent from the canonical Bible, had a great impact on the formation of an imagery in which angels appeared not only as protective entities, but also capable of transgressing the divine order. In other apocryphal writings, angels are described with very varied characteristics, from beings of great beauty to creatures that radiated fire or possessed multiple wings and faces. These narratives presented the possibility that angels experienced passions or emotions, which humanized them more than the canonical texts do. Although these works were not included in the official Bible, their influence is perceived in the mystical tradition, medieval iconography, and later literature, fueling debates about the true nature and morality of angels. Number 37. The connection with divine energy. Some esoteric currents, influenced by the New Age movement and certain Eastern interpretations, consider angels not as beings with anthropomorphic form, but as energetic manifestations or high-frequency vibrations. In this view, the angel would be a projection of divine light, capable of intervening on the physical plane if the individual reaches the appropriate level of spiritual sensitivity. According to this conception, invoking an angel would be more like tuning into a high frequency than requesting the intervention of a messenger with a face and wings. This point of view contrasts with traditional Christian iconography, which portrays angels as humanoid figures with perfect features. However, both perspectives have the same fundamental idea: the connection with the divine through intermediate beings that, in one way or another, facilitate communication between the earthly and the transcendent. Number 36. The Trumpets of the Apocalypse. In the Book of Revelation, 7 angels are mentioned who blow trumpets, unleashing a series of events of great magnitude on earth. Each trumpet blast marks the beginning of trials or catastrophes ranging from the fall of hail and fire to the affectation of the waters and sudden darkness. This prophetic narrative has been understood throughout the centuries as a warning about the divine judgment looming over humanity. The symbolism of the trumpet, used in warlike and ceremonial contexts in ancient times, emphasizes the idea of an inescapable announcement. When the time comes, there is no way to ignore the call. For some exegetes, trumpets have a purifying character, as they anticipate the total renewal of the world after the triumph of the divine will. For others, they represent a reminder of the power of divine justice, which cannot be postponed indefinitely. In both cases, the intervention of the angels, bearers of these trumpets, illustrates their active role in the eschatological drama, carrying out the orders of the Almighty at the decisive moment of sacred history. Number 35. Angels in popular culture. The presence of angels has spread to modern fiction through multiple cultural expressions, from literature to film and comics. Works such as Dan Brown's Angels and Demons popularized the idea of a secret society and religious conflicts featuring or surrounded by references to the angelic, increasing the public's curiosity about these beings. In the comic book universe, the character of Angel in the X-Men uses his winged condition as a distinctive feature, reflecting the symbolic appeal of wings and the ability to fly as something almost divine. Films and television series have represented angels in roles ranging from kindly protectors to implacable agents of divine punishment. This duality, hero or avenger, coincides with the traits found in religious tradition, where the angel can announce salvation or execute God's will in the face of iniquity. Popular culture, by constantly reinterpreting the figure of the angel, keeps alive the interest in these beings, combining the traditional background with new narratives that project them into contexts as varied as fantasy, suspense, or science fiction. Number 34. The Angel of the Lord in the Bible. In various scenes of the Old Testament, such as the burning bush, Exodus, or the experience of Gideon, Judges, the figure of the Angel of the Lord appears, a character who sometimes speaks in the first person as if he were God himself. This peculiarity has opened an extensive theological debate on whether it is a specific angel, with a higher rank, or a direct manifestation of divinity. Some interpret the biblical text as using the title, Angel of the Lord, to indicate a theophany, that is, an appearance of God himself in visible form. The confusion is intensified because, in certain passages, the narrative abruptly changes from referring to the angel of the Lord to speaking of the Lord alone, without explaining why. This literary phenomenon has given rise to hypotheses about the intimate union between God and his messengers, going so far as to suggest that the angel would be a way in which the divine presence becomes accessible to human beings. Regardless of the interpretation, the figure of the angel of the Lord underlines the sacred and transcendent character of these encounters, where the message transmitted carries the weight of divine authority. Number 33. Angels and the Four Elements. In the traditions of medieval alchemy and in certain Hermetic currents, the existence of angels was conceived to guard or govern the four basic elements: earth, air, fire, and water. This assignment found its foundation in the idea that all creation, visible and invisible, is organized in hierarchies, so that each element must have a heavenly representative or guardian. Thus, angels were incorporated into a scheme of correspondences where the terrestrial was related to the divine through symbols and rituals of purification. These currents were inspired by both Christianity and the Greek philosophy of the elements, fusing Christian thought with esoteric and occult notions. Practitioners of alchemy not only sought the transmutation of metals, but also spiritual perfection, and the figure of the elemental angel appeared as an intermediary that helped balance natural forces and guide the adept in his search for the inner philosopher's stone. Although this trend was not officially recognized by the Church, its interpretations continued to circulate in Hermetic and mystical circles, demonstrating the versatility of the angelic image. Number 32. The terrible aspect of angels. A constant in biblical stories is the reaction of amazement and fear at the appearance of angels. In the Gospel of Luke, for example, the angel who announces the birth of Jesus to the shepherds begins with the words, "Do not be afraid," reflecting an intervention so overwhelming that those who witness it feel terrified. This pattern is repeated in other narratives, such as the angelic visit to Zechariah, emphasizing that the angel is not simply a figure of kind goodness, but a manifestation that shakes human reality. Theological explanations indicate that the divine glory that accompanies an angel generates a natural reaction of reverence and fear, since it brings with it an experience of the supernatural that is impossible to assimilate immediately. Consequently, the phrase, "Do not be afraid," acts as a bridge to calm the human heart and convey the message that is desired to be delivered. Far from the childish image of angels with sweet faces, this terrible aspect reminds us that they are beings carrying a power and majesty that can be overwhelming even for those who seek the sacred. Number 31. Gabriel's message to Mary. The announcement to Mary, known as the Annunciation, is one of the most revered episodes in Christian tradition. In it, the angel Gabriel visits a young woman from Nazareth to tell her that she will be the mother of the Messiah, a fact that she conceived by the work of the Holy Spirit. The scene, described in the Gospel of Luke, has been represented in countless works of art, reflecting the significance of the moment when the divine intervenes directly in human history. According to theologians, Gabriel embodies the mission of heavenly messenger in its highest expression. Not only does he carry a crucial message for salvation, but he interacts with Mary, dispelling her doubts with the famous phrase, "Nothing is impossible for God." The precision with which this encounter is described, even mentioning the lineage of Mary and her fiancé Joseph, gives a profoundly human tone to the revelation, while also showing divine power. Thus, the passage of the Annunciation becomes a pillar of Christology and of the understanding of the role of angels as mediators between God and humanity. Number 30. Angels and the Last Judgment. In many Christian faiths, angels are considered to have a preponderant role in the events surrounding the Last Judgment. According to the Gospel of Matthew, they will be sent to separate the righteous from the sinners, a task that requires discernment and authority to determine who has followed the right path. This judicial role, traditionally associated with archangels and their hosts, reinforces the vision of angels as figures committed to cosmic justice. In other interpretations, angels would also collaborate in the resurrection of the dead and in the universal proclamation of divine sovereignty, serving as heralds who direct the faithful toward eternal life or toward damnation. Some apocalyptic texts describe the opening of books where the actions of each individual would be recorded, a procedure in which angels act as witnesses and custodians of the truth. This involvement in the Last Judgment underlines the moral and ethical dimension of the angelic ministry, considering that their mission is not limited to bringing messages of peace, but also includes the responsibility of upholding divine justice at the culminating moment of sacred history. Number 29. Angels and Celestial Music. From the first centuries of Christianity, numerous fathers of the Church postulated that angels are in a permanent state of praise to God. This vision was supported by biblical descriptions, especially in the book of Isaiah, where it is reported that the seraphim constantly proclaim, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts." From this arises the idea of angelic choirs that intone sublime melodies, far above any musical form known on earth. Medieval theology took this notion even further. Authors such as Hildegard of Bingen believed that when monks sang liturgical hymns, they were mystically uniting with the harmonies intoned by angels in heaven. From a mystical point of view, this angelic music is understood to transcend the limits of physical sound, and that angels, being spiritual beings, do not require instruments to generate their songs. In their direct contemplation of divinity, their entire being is converted into praise, giving rise to an eternal symphony that permeates the celestial order. Some theologians have gone so far as to suggest that the vibration of this song is the force that sustains the universe, uniting creation with its divine source. Whether taken as a metaphor or spiritual reality, the image of angels singing reflects the human search for the sublime, inspiring composers and poets throughout history in their quest to achieve, even fleetingly, a glimpse of celestial harmony. Number 28. There are female angels. Within the Judeo-Christian tradition, angelic references often use masculine pronouns or describe apparitions in a neutral way, without gender attributes. However, in other cultures and esoteric currents, representations of angels with a feminine appearance have emerged, which points to the need to symbolically balance the qualities associated with divinity: strength, wisdom, compassion, and beauty. The Ethiopian Orthodox religion, for example, contemplates icons that show angels with softened features, while in certain mystical literary passages the presence of mother angels or protectors who embody maternal aspects is suggested. In contemporary art, whether in paintings, sculptures, or popular illustrations, the figure of the female angel has become more common, reinforcing the idea that the divine is not limited to a single gender reading. Some spiritual currents, especially those of the New Age type, relate these female angels to the energy of the earth, fertility, or the cosmic mother. For many believers, this image brings closeness and warmth to the angelic world, offering a more inclusive vision of spiritual mediation. Although it does not have explicit support in traditional Christian theology, the appearance of female angels reflects the symbolic evolution of the concept of the sacred and the openness to understanding divinity in all its breadth. Number 27. Angels and the Star of Bethlehem. The account of Jesus' birth in the Gospels not only includes the visit of the Magi from the east, guided by the famous Star of Bethlehem, but also the intervention of angels who announce the good news to the shepherds. Some authors have connected both events, suggesting that the same divine force that moved the star to show the wise men the way was manifested in the angelic appearance, uniting heaven and earth in a unique way. This point of view sees in the Star of Bethlehem not a mere astronomical phenomenon, but a symbol of the heavenly plan that synchronizes cosmic movements with divine messages. Throughout history, different interpretations have attempted to explain the Star of Bethlehem as a comet, a planetary conjunction, or a supernatural phenomenon. Whatever the hypothesis, what the accounts emphasize is the joint presence of signs in the heavens, the star, and angelic messengers, charged with confirming the transcendental event that was about to happen. For many exegetes, this confluence evidences the idea that the entire cosmos, stars, angels, humanity, participates in the crucial moments of sacred history. Thus, the search for the Magi and the angelic proclamation reveal an intricate divine coordination where no element is isolated. Number 26. The Seven Archangels. Although most Christians recognize Michael, Gabriel, and Raphael most familiarly, in certain apocryphal texts and mystical traditions a total of 7 main archangels are mentioned. Among them are Uriel, sometimes described as the fire of God, Raguel, Sariel, and Remiel, each with a specific function in the administration of the cosmos. The Book of Enoch and other extra-biblical Jewish writings describe a heavenly council where these archangels guide and watch over creation under divine authority. The idea of 7 archangels also appears in some variants of Catholic and Orthodox spirituality, although not officially. In iconography, they are often represented carrying symbols that allude to their respective roles: Uriel with a flame or a book, Raguel with a scale, Sariel with a scepter, etc. For those who adopt this belief, these 7 superior beings fulfill the task of maintaining universal order in aspects such as justice, illumination, healing, and the transmission of prophecies. This angelic pantheon, more extensive than generally accepted, reflects the complexity of the spiritual world as it was conceived in certain ancient esoteric and devotional circles. Number 25. The protective mantle of the angels. In many popular prayers, especially those dedicated to the guardian angel, reference is made to a cloak or wings that surround the believer, protecting him from physical and spiritual dangers. These poetic expressions have their roots in the Psalms, where divine protection is spoken of in terms of shelter under the wings of the Almighty. Over the centuries, the liturgy and popular devotion associated this image directly with angels, embodying in a more tangible way the closeness and protection of heaven. The symbolism of wings dates back to ancient times, when birds were seen as messengers between the world above and earth, due to their ability to fly. By attributing wings to angels, their intermediary nature and their speed in moving or coming to the aid of the faithful is emphasized. In this sense, the angelic cloak expresses the idea of total protection, which not only protects against evil, but also provides comfort in the face of loneliness or uncertainty. Thus, the image of the angelic wings or mantle endures as a compassionate and serene gesture that affirms that, beyond the difficulties, there is always a divine refuge available. Number 24. Fallen angels in the Book of Enoch. The Book of Enoch, an apocryphal text of Jewish origin, describes the story of the Watchers, angels who came down to earth and joined with human women, giving birth to the Nephilim, a race of giants. According to this account, these angels imparted forbidden knowledge to humanity, such as the forging of weapons and magical arts, causing the corruption of society. Ultimately, Their behavior led to divine wrath, resulting in their punishment and the Great Flood. This version of the fall of the angels differs from the narrative about Lucifer in the Christian tradition, although both express the idea of a rebellion against the divine order. The story of the Watchers raises multiple theological and anthropological questions. How can beings created for purity and obedience succumb to earthly passions? What role did this forbidden teaching play in the advancement or degradation of humanity? Although the Book of Enoch was not included in the Western biblical canon, it exerted a profound influence on rabbinical, Christian, and later literature. Its vision of angels transgressing boundaries and engendering hybrids fueled esoteric interpretations and theories about vestiges of ancient civilizations, contributing to the enduring fascination with the figure of the fallen angel. Number 23. Belief in orbs of light. In New Age culture and in certain paranormal investigations, the term orbs of light became popular to describe strange luminous spheres that appear in photographs or are detected in environments where there is supposedly spiritual activity. To skeptics, most of these orbs are simply specks of dust, lens reflections, or moisture particles that generate optical effects. However, there are those who maintain that, in certain contexts, the presence of orbs of light coincides with important emotional events or spiritual rituals, thus associating them with angelic manifestations or the presence of disembodied beings. This interpretation is in line with the idea that angels can manifest themselves as pure energy, visible only under certain conditions of sensitivity or through recording equipment that captures unusual frequencies. The defenders of this theory point to events in which the orbs seem to move intentionally or react to music and prayer. Although there is no conclusive scientific evidence, the debate continues to live on in forums and communities of paranormal research, reflecting the constant search for tangible signs of the invisible and the protective company that many associate with angels. Number 22. Angels in the defense of cities. Throughout history, various local stories have attributed to angels or saints with angelic attributes the liberation of besieged cities or miraculous protection from catastrophes. One of the best-known cases is that of Saint Michael the Archangel and the castle of Sant'Angelo in Rome. According to legend, the Archangel appeared during a plague in the 6th century, announcing the end of the epidemic and manifesting his presence over the fortress. Since then, he has been venerated as a divine defender, with processions and celebrations being held in his honor. Similar events are recorded in popular traditions in different places. Cities that claim to have been saved from invasions, fires, or earthquakes thanks to the intervention of a guardian angel. For the faithful, these stories reaffirm the belief that heavenly protection not only acts on an individual level, but also on entire communities, especially when there is unity in prayer and devotion. Beyond historical accuracy, the rooting of these stories in the collective memory shows the human need to recognize a transcendent force that watches over the common good and prevents mass destruction in critical moments. Number 21. The four living creatures of the apocalypse. In the book of Revelation, the Apostle John describes a vision of the throne of God surrounded by four living creatures full of eyes, each with a different face: a lion, a bull, a man, and an eagle. Although they are not explicitly called angels, many interpreters associate them with the angelic hierarchies due to their role of perpetual worship and their proximity to the divine throne. Some theologians relate these four creatures to the so-called cherubim described in the book of Ezekiel, which also have zoomorphic facets and multiple wings. The symbolism of these living creatures is vast. The lion usually represents royalty or courage, the bull strength and industriousness, man intelligence and reason, and the eagle's spiritual elevation. In later Christian tradition, a parallel has been made with the four Gospels, attributing to each of these faces a sacred author. Regardless of their exact interpretation, the presence of these beings enhances the majestic and mysterious character of the heavenly court, where the contemplation of God is mixed with an overwhelming force that transcends all merely human forms. Number 20. Angels in precolombian mythology. Although the precolumbian cultures of America did not use the term angel in their cosmology, many of them had the figure of winged messengers or intermediaries between the gods and humans. In Mayan mythology, for example, there is talk of divine entities with the appearance of birds that brought prophetic messages or blessings from the higher gods. Something similar can be found in the Aztec pantheon, where minor gods or spirits associated with wind and rain also fulfilled the function of connecting the earthly plane with the heavenly one. These parallels suggest the existence of a universal archetype of beings that communicate higher realities to humanity, fulfilling a protective or revealing role. After the Spanish conquest, Christian missionaries identified some of these beings with angels, trying to incorporate or reinterpret local myths in the light of their theology. However, the original stories maintained their own symbolic and ritual richness, where wings, or the ability to fly, illustrated proximity to the divine. This cultural exchange demonstrates how the idea of winged creatures mediating between the spiritual and earthly worlds is not limited to a single tradition, but resonates in the imagination of multiple civilizations. Number 19. Holy Angels and Orthodox Iconography. In the Orthodox Church, the representation of angels is distinguished by their sobriety and at the same time their majesty. They are usually painted with long robes that emphasize the sacred dimension, in contrast to the more humanized clothing sometimes seen in Western painting. Their large, outstretched wings symbolize the speed with which they can move between heaven and earth to execute divine orders. It is common to see them holding flaming swords, recalling the warrior and protective aspect of these spiritual beings. They also appear with orbs or spheres decorated with crosses, representing Christ's royalty over creation and the role of angels as bearers of heavenly authority. In Orthodox icons, the faces of angels are often painted with a mixture of serenity and firmness. Their large, penetrating eyes suggest a higher intelligence and constant attention to God's will. Likewise, the color palette, in which gold predominates, highlights the divine presence that the angels reflect. Details, such as the arrangement of the feathers and the solemn posture, seek to convey the transcendence of angels, beings perpetually committed to divine praise and the protection of humanity. This iconography not only visually educates the faithful about the angelic nature, but also serves as a bridge to spiritual contemplation, underlining the closeness of the celestial in daily life. Number 18. Contemporary sightings. Accounts of encounters with angels are not limited to antiquity or biblical narratives. Even today, there are those who claim to have seen luminous beings or to have felt their help in times of great danger, such as traffic accidents or serious illness. Some people describe a sudden and miraculous change of circumstances, while others report sensing a radiant figure who protected them from imminent harm. These accounts, often transmitted orally or through testimonies in the press or in books of near-death experiences, continue to fuel faith and curiosity about whether these heavenly presences really exist. Skeptics point out that many of these accounts can be explained by psychological phenomena, such as hallucinations caused by stress or lack of oxygen. However, Those who have had these experiences maintain that nothing compares to the feeling of peace, warmth, and security that they associate with angelic intervention. For them, it is not merely an illusion, but an act of divine love that has remained engraved in their memory. These contemporary sightings keep alive the debate about the real nature of angels, exploring whether their presence can be perceived even in a technological and rationalist age. Number 17. Superhuman intelligence. One of the characteristics that the Judeo-Christian tradition usually attributes to angels is their superior intelligence, often described as illuminated by the direct contemplation of divine truth. According to theologians such as Thomas Aquinas, angels know God's plans instantly and deeply, without the limitations of sequential reasoning typical of human beings. This extraordinary mental capacity allows them to act as heavenly counselors, proposing paths of wisdom and protecting people when they are unable to see beyond their immediate circumstances. However, this intelligence is not simply a wealth of information, but a comprehensive understanding of the cosmic order. For this reason, angels can even foresee situations in which an individual is in moral or physical danger, intervening according to the divine will to direct him toward good. In mystical literature, this angelic wisdom is spoken of as a state of constant contemplation, a knowledge that flows from the divine essence and is not clouded by emotions or temptations. Hence, many believers invoke the guidance of angels when faced with momentous decisions, hoping to receive that clarity that only celestial beings possess. Number 16. Angels in medieval dance and music. During the Middle Ages, illuminated manuscripts, frescoes, and even some pieces of sculpture portrayed angels dancing and playing instruments high in heaven. This iconography suggests that heavenly praise was not limited to solemn singing, but also included expressions of joy and harmony, such as circular dancing or the accompaniment of harps, violas, and lyres. This type of scene often appeared in cloisters and churches, reminding the faithful of the promise that, after death, they could access a space where joy never ends. Likewise, medieval music, which frequently sought to reflect divine perfection through polyphonic and choral chants, was inspired by the idea that angels sang eternal melodies. Hence, the sacred repertoire, with its Gregorian chants, aspired to be an earthly echo of the angelic symphony. On certain holidays, such as Christmas or Easter, biblical episodes were dramatized with representations of angels announcing the resurrection or birth of Christ, and these choreographies or musical representations made palpable the idea that the joy of heaven could also invade earth during the climactic moments of the liturgy. Number 15. The angel in the Garden of Eden. In the Genesis account, after Adam and Eve's disobedience, God places a cherub with a flaming sword at the entrance to the Garden of Eden to prevent those who might try to return from entering. This passage underlines the mission of angels as guardians of sacred places and suggests that earthly paradise, once lost, is beyond human reach. The flaming sword symbolizes both divine justice and the inaccessibility of primordial perfection. Biblical commentators have debated for centuries the deeper meaning of this heavenly guardian. Some claim that his presence signals that humanity can no longer appropriate divine gifts without the mediation of grace, while others interpret the angel and his sword as a warning against the arrogance of wanting to regain paradise by one's own means. In any case, the image is powerful. It not only implies the physical closure of a space, but also the spiritual rupture that would demand the subsequent redemptive intervention, according to Christian theology. Thus, this guardian angel embodies both the protection of the sacred and the barrier that separates fallen man from full communion with God. Number 14. The healing powers. The figure of the Archangel Raphael exemplifies the healing aspect that has been attributed to angels within the Judeo-Christian tradition. His name, which in Hebrew means God heals, appears in books such as Tobit, where Raphael accompanies and guides the young Tobit, protecting him from demons and giving him a remedy to cure his father's blindness. This role as protector and heavenly doctor led to many prayers and devotions asking for Raphael's intercession to heal ailments of the body and spirit. The belief in the healing power of angels has also permeated popular spirituality, where they are prayed to not only for physical recovery, but for emotional comfort and psychological healing. Even within contemporary holistic approaches, Raphael's energy is spoken of as a comforting vibration that can restore internal balance. Thus, the image of angels as healers illustrates the compassionate dimension associated with them. Their mission is not limited to delivering messages or fulfilling orders of a warlike nature, but encompasses the restoration of life in its fullest form, returning harmony to the suffering human being. Number 13. The Battle of Saint Michael and Lucifer. According to Judeo-Christian tradition, Lucifer, considered the most beautiful angel, rebelled against God driven by pride. In response, the Archangel Michael led the heavenly hosts to defeat the rebels and expel them from heaven. This battle, described in the Apocalypse, has been interpreted as the archetypal combat between good and evil, with Michael assuming the role of captain of divine loyalty. The most iconic representation of this scene shows the archangel wielding a sword or lance against a winged dragon, an image that has occupied a central place in Christian art throughout the centuries. For many theologians, this battle embodies the purity of obedience to the divine will versus the temptation of self-sufficiency and pride. Michael, whose name means "who is like God," symbolizes humility and the defense of justice, while Lucifer, after his fall, becomes the adversary of humanity. From this founding myth arise various reflections on freedom and responsibility, both of angels and of human beings. Likewise, the constant representation of Michael as the victor reaffirms the hope in the triumph of good and in the protection that humanity has through faithful angels. Number 12. Angels as spiritual guides. In the New Testament, angels appear in key episodes to help and guide the apostles. A notable example is the liberation of Peter from prison, narrated in the Acts of the Apostles, where it is described how an angel enters the cell, makes the chains fall from his hands and leads him out of the place undetected. This direct intervention serves to reinforce the idea that, in divine missions, heavenly messengers are ready to smooth the way for men who have been called to spread the gospel. In later Christian tradition, these episodes are interpreted as showing that angels do not act only in extreme cases of life or death, but also in the spiritual growth of believers. Hence, numerous devotional practices include asking for the assistance of angels to find God's will, discern vocations, or strengthen faith. The image of the angel guiding the apostles reveals the closeness of the divine in the moments of greatest vulnerability, and has become a pillar of trust that many faithful place in heavenly help in times of difficulty or indecision. Number 11. The mystery of the language of angels. In his first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 13, St. Paul mentions the possibility of speaking in human and angelic languages, alluding to the gift of tongues that some members of the Christian community possessed. While a common interpretation associates this reference with the ability to express oneself in unknown languages by natural means, others see in the phrase an allusion to a distinct and mysterious heavenly language, completely inaccessible to human reason. This language of angels has become a theological and spiritual enigma, which opens the door to various speculations. In the Pentecostal and Charismatic tradition, it is believed that certain believers can be inspired by the Holy Spirit to pronounce words that do not belong to any earthly language, and some think that this represents the angelic language mentioned by Paul. Meanwhile, in the esoteric realm, angelic alphabets and systems have been developed, such as the Enochian language attributed to John Dee, that claim to reproduce this form of sacred communication. Be that as it may, what is important for the Christian faith is that, even when this gift is available, without love, nothing is worth anything, remembering that the central objective is not to unravel the linguistic mystery, but to live in harmony with the divine will. Number 10. The Angel of Death. The notion of an angel of death is found in multiple cultures and religions, representing the entity in charge of collecting souls at the end of their earthly life. In Islamic tradition, he is known as Azrael, who, according to the Quran and other texts, keeps track of each individual and knows the exact moment when the person must die. His intervention can inspire fear, as it symbolizes the cessation of physical existence, but it also gives hope, as he is seen as a companion who opens the door to eternity and divine judgment. In Judeo-Christian circles, while there is no explicit mention of a single angel of death, there is talk of angelic beings who carry out God's sentence. For example, in the story of the Jewish Passover, when the destroying angel passes through Egypt. For theology, these passages highlight divine sovereignty over life and death, and the concept that death is not the end, but the transition to another stage of existence. In this way, the angel of death, in any of its variants, reveals the sacred dimension of the end of earthly life, embodying both the justice of God and the certainty of the destiny that awaits every human being. Number 9. The presence of the angel of death. In the account of the Exodus, God orders the Israelites to mark the lintels and doorposts of their doors with the blood of a lamb so that the angel of death, passing through Egypt, will distinguish the houses of the chosen people and not take the lives of their firstborn. This episode, known as the First Passover, highlights an essential aspect of divine justice. It does not always act in an abstract or impersonal way, but can use heavenly messengers to execute a specific judgment. Hence the talk of an angel of death, or destroying angel, who punishes those who oppress the people of God. Throughout the history of biblical interpretation, this passage has given rise to reflections on the righteousness of God, who simultaneously shows mercy toward his own and harshness toward the oppressors. For some theologians, the exterminating angel does not represent divine cruelty so much as the consequence of the rejection of God's will, which turns against those who persist in injustice. Thus, the figure of the punishing angel serves the function of reminding us that the divine message entails responsibility and that the Pharaoh's arrogance precipitates the intervention of a celestial being who puts limits on human tyranny. Number 8. Angelic visitors in secret. The letter to the Hebrews, 13:2, invites hospitality, recalling that some, unwittingly, hosted angels. The most cited example is that of Abraham, who met 3 visitors in the oak grove of Mamre and later discovered that they were actually messengers of God. This teaching highlights the ability of angels to assume human appearance and blend in with ordinary people, without displaying, at least at first, obvious supernatural signs. The moral implication that stems from this belief is significant. You never know who might be in need of your help, and every act of kindness can become an opportunity to encounter the divine. In Jewish and Christian tradition, this passage has been extended as a call to humility and respect towards any person, as it could conceal an angelic presence that is observing the compassion of the human being. Thus, the concept of angelic visitors functions as a continuous reminder that heaven can manifest itself through the most everyday forms. Number 7. Marian apparitions and presence of angels. In various Marian apparitions recognized by the Catholic Church, such as those of Lourdes, Fatima, or Guadalupe, testimonies have been documented that indicate the presence of angels accompanying the Virgin. In some cases, visionaries report seeing luminous figures that precede or flank the Marian figure, referring to them as winged beings or radiant spirits. Their mission is interpreted as guarding and preparing the environment so that the Virgin's message is received without obstacles, protected from negative influences or profane curiosities. This phenomenon reinforces the idea that angels not only intervene in ancient biblical episodes, but also have an active role in more recent events that the Church considers divine manifestations. The function of guardianship implies that where there is a sacred encounter between the divine and humanity, angels act as guardians and servants, vigilant so that grace is poured out without interference. However, each Marian apparition has particularities, and the presence of angels around them often evokes the symbolic framework of a heaven that is permanently attentive and close to human history. Number 6. The Seven Seals and the Angels in the Apocalypse. The Book of Revelation describes a scenario in which the Lamb, symbol of Christ, breaks one by one the 7 seals of a sealed book, unleashing events of great impact on earth. Each released seal triggers the intervention of angels and the appearance of horsemen and various portents. This passage illustrates how, in the apocalyptic conception, the realization of the divine plan for humanity involves the participation of angels, who blow trumpets, pour out bowls, or supervise cataclysms that purify and signal the imminence of a definitive judgment. The symbolism of the seals points to God's absolute control over the course of history, and the angels act as mediators who materialize the stages of that plan. Throughout the chapters, these celestial beings are described as announcing pestilences, wars, or cosmic phenomena, not with arbitrary cruelty, but as part of a process of purification and renewal. For many believers, this narrative, although enigmatic, reinforces the confidence that, despite the calamities, everything remains within the divine will, and the angels are in charge of orchestrating the changes that will lead to the creation of a new heaven and a new earth. Number 5. The angel who wrestled with Jacob. In Genesis, it is reported that Jacob, afraid of meeting his brother Esau, spends the night wrestling with a man until dawn. The nature of this opponent is ambiguous. Some texts and commentators describe him as an angel, while others think he could be God himself. The struggle culminates with Jacob being given the name Israel, which means he who wrestles with God, and with a wound in his hip that leaves him limping as a sign of the encounter. This episode is fascinating because it reveals an unusual facet of contact with the divine. It is not a message of peace or comfort, but an intense struggle in which Jacob refuses to let go of the stranger until he receives a blessing. Various theological interpretations see it as a metaphor for the life of faith, which sometimes involves fighting doubts, guilt, and fears before reaching spiritual maturity. If the being is an angel, how is it possible for a human to withstand a nighttime battle with a heavenly emissary? The most widely shared response suggests that the apparent equality in the struggle is God's way of inviting Jacob, and by extension, all of humanity, to persist in seeking and asking for blessings, even when it seems that all is lost. Number 4. The angelic interpretation of dreams. Genesis shows us Joseph, son of Jacob, interpreting dreams that change the course of Egyptian history, and in the New Testament, Joseph, Mary's husband, receives guidance from an angel in a dream to protect Jesus from Herod's intentions. These experiences reveal that, in the biblical framework, angels can use the dream mind as a channel to instruct, warn, or console. Dreams, then, would not be simple psychological processes, but a space in which the divine can break in a symbolic and direct way. In the Christian and Jewish tradition, the angel in dreams plays the role of an internal messenger, facilitating the understanding of a higher will or anticipating future events. This fits with the perspective that human beings, during sleep, are less distracted by everyday concerns, so their spiritual receptivity increases. For this reason, saints and mystics have taught us to pay attention to those dreams that evoke unusual depth, carefully discerning whether they really come from God or are a mere reflection of the unconscious. In any case, the biblical account emphasizes angelic intervention as a guarantor of the veracity and scope of certain dream revelations. Number 3. Angels guarding sacred relics. In the Middle Ages, there were many legends that told how angels protected relics of great religious value, such as the True Cross, the supposed cross where Jesus died, or the Holy Grail, the cup used at the Last Supper. There was talk of monasteries where monks claimed to see luminescences or hear angelic chants around these objects, interpreting them as signs of divine guardianship. In this way, the idea that angels not only protect people, but also the most powerful symbols of the Christian faith was reinforced. Some stories indicated that, when faced with threats of looting or destruction, an inexplicable glow scared away attackers, or that winged warriors appeared on the city walls defending the relics. Although it is difficult to corroborate such events historically, the persistence of these stories in popular tradition attests to the deep trust in supernatural protection. On a theological level, the belief that relics can carry a special presence of sanctity explains why angels would have a special interest in safeguarding them. That which embodies the memory of sacrifice or divine grace becomes a point of connection between the visible and the invisible, and therefore deserves exceptional protection. Number 2. Wings as a metaphor for the divine. Although the Bible describes some angels with expressions such as wings and multiple faces, especially in the prophetic books, no minute details are given about their actual appearance. Over time, Christian art adopted wings as a distinctive and emblematic feature, probably influenced by Greco-Roman representations of winged deities or genies. The symbolic utility of wings is undeniable. They indicate spiritual lightness, purity, and the ability to move between heaven and earth without physical barriers. Thus, Christian iconography, and later Renaissance iconography, popularized the figure of the winged angel as the visual definition of an ethereal being. This metaphor of the divine extended its influence to multiple fields. Literature, music, and film use the image of the winged angel as a synonym for hope, comfort, and transcendence. Even beyond religion, in cultural expressions there is talk of having wings as a sign of freedom and grace. For many believers, these wings are a visible way of understanding the love of God that reaches out to humanity, uniting the infinite with the finite. Number 1. The great mystery, the pure nature of angelic love. To conclude this account of the most impressive mysteries of angels, the notion that these beings exist solely to love and serve God stands out, reflecting a purity of intention alien to selfishness or vanity. While humans struggle between their own will and the divine, angels dwell in a perpetual state of obedience and devotion. This unconditional love is not passive, but leads them to fulfill missions of all kinds, from announcing miraculous births to waging cosmic battles against evil. The enigma lies in what it would be like to experience reality when one lives in a state of complete donation to the Creator. Do angels have feelings similar to humans, or does their perpetual joy transcend all earthly emotion? How do they balance their role as protectors and messengers with continual reverence for divinity? These questions reflect the metaphysical dimension of angelic love, a love that, by its very perfection, exceeds the limits of human understanding. For many believers, this quality is the key to their admiration for angels. The certainty that, behind each intervention, there is a pure and unconditional gesture that embodies the essence of divine love. Thank you for watching our video. Subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. Give it a like, comment your thoughts, and share this video with your friends and family.